going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the Montgomery ISD regular Board of Trustees meeting, November 17th, 2020. At this point, could everybody stand up? We're going to go ahead and say the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one indivisible.
We have Mac here.
He's not. He's going to be a little late because he's swearing in the mayor, so that's why we're...
Okay, perfect. So at this point, the first thing that we're going to do on the agenda tonight is canvass the election. And canvassing the election means that I get to read what the election results are. So for MISD trustee position 1, Mike Hopkins, early vote, had 10,050 votes. On the election day, 1,409 votes for a total of 11,459 votes. Me, Jim Dossie, on the early voting had 7,011 votes. Election day, 726 votes, and total 7,737 votes. For Montgomery ISD position 2, Sean Dennison, in the early voting had 11,355 votes. On election day, 1,486 votes for a total of 12,841 votes. Adam Simmons, Adam.
I've been called worse. It's okay.
Sorry. At early votes, 4,894. Election day, 532 for a total of 5,426 votes. MISD position 3, Lori Turner, on early voting had 12,383 votes. Election day, 1,594 votes for a total of 13,977 votes. Ron Harridge on early voting had 5,235 votes. Election day, 571 votes for a total of 5,806 votes. At this point, do I have a motion to certify the results of the November 3rd, 2020 election?
So moved.
All in favor? Oh, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay, so Adam, did you have any comments? You're going to make them?
Yeah, no, I would appreciate it. So, I was just reminded of one of my biggest regrets, 3.5 years on the school board. So for the new board members, when you grew up and attended school, maybe you didn't say the Texas Pledge like I did. So I just want to remind you that there's a cheat sheet right there on the wall. And 3.5 years, I still haven't memorized it. I still read it. So I just wanted you to know that that was there. But, I was thinking I was going to write some things down, and then I decided, no, I'll just shoot from the hip. That's what I do anyway. That's what I do best. And, it's been 3.5 years. It's been a tough 3.5 years. But at first, when I called Mr. Dennison to congratulate him on his victory, I also told him I didn't expect the thorough butt whipping he gave me. So, he gave me a dose of humility over there. So I just wanted to thank him personally. Sean, I know you'll do great up here. I know you've got the best interests of the district at heart. You and I have gotten to know each other a little bit over the last 6 months, and I value that correspondence. And I want you to know that my phone is always open for you if you need anything. Don't hesitate to call. And Lori and Mike, I know you guys are going to do fantastic as well. So I, as a parent of students in this district, am excited for what you guys bring to this table and to bring to the district. So congratulations, very well earned victories there. I wanted to make sure that I did say to the staff at MISD, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure getting to know each and every one of you. Pleasure being in the trenches with you. And we couldn't have had a better admin team in my belief. We couldn't have a better set of teachers in my belief. bus drivers even. I mean, up from the top down, it's just an outstanding organization. And so from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much. And I'm proud that in my mind, and I'm sure Jim will allude to this as well, I truly feel like this board has left MISD in a better position this point in time than we were even in February of last year. I'm very thankful that Dr. Morrison is here guiding the ship. I still think it's the absolute right call. I think he's just what MISD needs in this time moving forward in this time of transition. So again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much to each and every one of you. I hope you knew that I put my all in this, and kind of bittersweet. I'm going to miss being around here, but you guys will still see me. So congratulations again, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam. So when I was thinking about tonight and what I was going to say, I was thinking about kind of doing the typical thank you speech, but I really didn't want to do that because I really wanted to, as being a member of the board for 6 years, and because my dad was on the board for so long, I wanted to say things that I thought could really help the district and help this board, and specifically the new board members, because you guys are going to be taking over now, and we need the ship going in the right direction. What I wanted to say also is everything that I'm saying tonight is just my own personal opinion. It's not the opinion of the board or anything like that. But, you know, on this election that we've just had, just a few reflections on this election. I do want to thank the candidates that we didn't have a negative election at all. In the past, it hasn't always been like that, and I really appreciate that. I know even in the previous one before that, there were things said that those things never quite go away. Lori, where you're at, I've never seen somebody campaign so hard in my life for board. You did a fantastic job. The one thing I would say also is that Dr. Morrison, when he started this, he included all of the candidates in a lot of the meetings, and we've never done that before, and that was actually really a good idea, and I hope that we continue that because it really helped, I believe, in the transition. And I would also like to personally, like Adam said, I'd like to personally thank Mike because after the election, we had some Facebook messages, and his Facebook message, I really appreciate all the things that you said. They really meant a lot to me and my family, and so I really appreciate that. So with that kind of start, I wanted to give the new board members a few pro tips. Not that we're pros up here, but things that maybe you wouldn't know if you were getting on the board that you need to know. The first is that as a trustee, you are a trustee. You're not a representative. And I know it's a slight difference in the wording, but it's a very important difference in the wording. Mainly because you have a lot of constituents that you are working for. Taxpayers, local governments, your family, neighbors, and friends. And they all have different priorities. So as a trustee, that means you have to stay above the fray and try to make the best decision for all of them at the same time. One of the things that we've also learned is that nothing is private that's on the board. And I had talked with Lori about this before. As a board member, we're always subject to open meetings requests and things like that I know as a board we've been really surprised about. Not that there was anything to show, but that is something that you need to be aware of. One of the biggest things is that you will always know information that the public will not know. And this isn't not being transparent, but there are certain things that as a board member, you're going to know personnel things. You're going to know personal things about students. You're going to know if there's a grievance or something like that are private to the district, and you can't disclose those things by law. That's it's very difficult to manage that. And so with that, it's when you make a decision as a board, you don't have to agree, and there's nothing wrong with disagreeing with opinions that are made. I think that there's, as you've seen on the board in this last couple of years, we've had some votes that weren't 7-0, and that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's great to have other opinions. And I want to say especially, in particular, I've gained a lot of respect for Gary Hammonds over this last year because Gary always sticks up for his opinion on things. We don't always agree on things, but in particular, I just wanted to call Gary out and say that I've gained a lot of respect for you, and I appreciate that. The other thing that is interesting is that the media is very hard to manage. So I know that we've all seen that over the last year, especially that sometimes people in the media kind of go off on their own, and people have a tendency to say things without really knowing what they're talking about. My biggest disappointment over this last 3 years, I would say, is that it seems like the district and the board has lost some respect from the public. And it's distrust, and there's a lot of different reasons why that might be. I want to read you a comment from my Facebook page that was made after the election. Now, I've definitely cleaned it up because there are some bad things that people say. But this one particular comment, I think, drives it home. Oh, thank God for the city of Montgomery and the school children of MISD. Now, maybe the abuse settled lawsuits slapped with gag clauses won't be needed. May the evil lose their power and never get it back. I tried to read that with emphasis because what I'm trying to show you is that I think that the board and the school district has kind of caused this problem for itself. When we make promises about being totally transparent and being able to promise things to the district and to the public, and we can't disclose certain things, that causes this distrust with the public. And some of the tactics that have been used have also caused this problem. Sometimes the ends don't justify the means. So some examples of the behavior that creates distrust among the community for the district: making comments on Facebook that the public can speak at the voting booth, knowing who's on the ballot, actively trying to recruit candidates to run against sitting board members, not sticking up for fellow board members to your friends and family when you know that what they're saying is incorrect or wrong, openly supporting candidates against sitting board members. And this isn't just words of support, it's sitting with candidates and taking pictures with them, sending out emails to the public that the board is unethical, conducting television interviews, saying that the board and an administration are hiding information and not being transparent, actively trying to undermine board decisions by conducting your own investigations, intimidating and publicly humiliating staff and administration, and secretly taping conversations, going out on your own to negotiate deals for the district contrary to the board's official position and direction. These are all things that have happened. I definitely wish they wouldn't have happened, but these are things that create distrust with the public for the board. And so specifically for Mike, Lori, and Sean, I want you guys to know this is not normal board behavior. This is not what you should emulate or think is right, because it isn't. One of the things that my dad told me when I first got on the board, not that you have to listen to my dad, but he always seems to get smarter as I get older, is that for the first year, ask as many questions as you can, because your main job is to listen and learn. The school business is very different than being in public and the public for-profit business. There's a lot of things that you don't know, and it's very important that you understand all the aspects of a decision before you make a decision. Always remember that district employees, staff, teachers, administrators, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, they're normal people that deserve respect and common decency. We don't call them out publicly. We don't try to publicly embarrass them. Most of them have kids in the district. I know a lot of these folks that you see up here have kids that work in the that go to the district and are students. Some of them might even be on the soccer teams that you coach. And everybody makes mistakes. Some people screw things up, and that doesn't mean it was done intentionally. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm asking for grace for the people that work here, and that they're just, for what I've seen over the last 6 years, they're just trying to do the best job that they possibly can. And they love the district. We can't pay them enough. They know they don't get paid enough, but they still work here because they love being here and they love the district. Be careful, and finally, be careful about making promises about accountability and transparency. It's not that those things are bad things to do, because we all want to be transparent and we all want to hold the district accountable. But those are great things to talk about. But regarding accountability in particular, your only employee is the superintendent. Superintendent manages the staff. And so you hold him accountable. He knows that. Dr. Morrison, we pay him the big bucks to do that. But he's the one that you hold accountable for holding the staff accountable. Transparency is a good thing that we want to strive for, but you have to be very careful about that. I believe that this board has been very transparent over the last year, especially, but there are certain things that the board cannot discuss. Things like identities of students, specific punishments given, details of ongoing investigations. So if you think back to some of the problems that we've had over the last year, the hazing incident, for example, the board knew pretty early on what had pretty much happened, but we couldn't discuss things like that. And so that's just part of the job. But you have to think about that the next time that there's a hazing incident or a harassment case or a COVID-19 case. We have to be careful about what we disclose to the public. And if we say that we're going to disclose everything or be completely transparent, and we can't, then what does the public think? Cover up. So kind of on to the things that I think that are positive for the district, and things that I'm really proud of this board and the district itself. I do believe that this district is heading in the right direction. So one of the big things that we've done, of course, it's great that we're in a district, and that's great. And we've turned the district around as far as the budget, and we've even given raises. But I would say the biggest piece of work that this board has done over the last year or so has been the new balanced scorecard. So I can't emphasize enough how important this is, because it really addresses this need for transparency, not only at the board level, but also for the public as well. The balanced scorecard, if you guys, for the public that are out there that don't know what I'm talking about, basically about I think it was last fall, we started a process where we were going to take a look at the goals for the district. And through a long process of looking at the goals, making them SMART goals, accountable, measurable, time-bound, we started looking at these goals. And in the end, where we've gotten to is a very good set of not only goals, but transforming those into key performance indicators that are going to be able to show just how well the district is functioning at any particular time. This is huge for transparency and accountability, and it's the tool that you guys are going to be able to use to judge the effectiveness of the superintendent and know at any particular time how well the district is functioning. I'm particularly proud also of the Education Foundation. So one of the things that Bo Reese and I started 6 years ago was the Education Foundation, which, in my opinion, if you haven't been to an Education Foundation meeting, I encourage you. We have the gala every year. It's one of the things that, in my opinion, is really going to help Montgomery and Montgomery ISD be the best that it can possibly be. It's the place that we can think about those big, hairy, audacious goals for the district. What if we want to try to have a technology lab with CNC machines? What if we want an observatory at Montgomery? These are things that the MISD Education Foundation could possibly do. In closing, I just want to say that I appreciate all the time that I've been allowed to be here on the board. My motivations for helping the district have not changed. My kids, my family, my wife is still a teacher at Montgomery. I still have 3 kids in the district. I have a nephew here. I have lifelong friends that work here. The teachers that I had growing up had a tremendous impact on my life. Some of them, Miss Giesinger, Miss Harridge, Coach Harridge, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Winnicky, Coach Hurd, Dub Newberg. Some of these teachers even went to my dad's funeral, which I really appreciated. That's how close the bonds were. But I just want to say that I just want to thank everybody for the time. And I will be around, like Adam said. You will know where to find me, and I appreciate all the hard work that this board has done over the last year or so. And you'll find me helping out with the Education Foundation. So with that, thank you. So at this,
In recognition for 3.5 years of service, the board would like to present Mr. Adam Simmons with this plaque.
Oh, man.
And thank you for all you've done for Montgomery. We're in a better place because of your term.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And also, I'd like to thank Mr. Dossie on behalf of the board specifically and MISD as a whole from May of 2013 through June of 16, and also from 2017 through today, which is 3.5 years or so. Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay.
Who says this isn't a free job?
So I think, do we have Judge back here?
We do have the judge.
All right. Hey, Judge. At this point, I think we're going to go ahead and go into issuing the certificates of the election.
Are you ready, Judge? Yes, sir.
Ready.
You're the judge.
Montgomery ISD Board, Trustee Position 1 of the State of Texas, and will to the best of my ability preserve, protect, defend, and this state, so help me God. Congratulations. I need to sign this. All right, Sean Dennison, please.
Script.
I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of Montgomery ISD, Board of Trustees of the state of Texas, and will to the best of my ability preserve, protect, defend the Constitution, laws of the United States, and this state. So help me God. Congratulations, sir. Step right over here for me, please. You can sanitize that if you want. Still have to, right there. Just need to sign right there. Congratulations. You're very welcome. Or Turner. Raise your right hand, please. In the name and authority of the state of Texas, I state your name.
I, Audit Timeline,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of Montgomery ISD Board of Trustees,
Montgomery ISD Board of Trustees,
Position 3,
Position 3,
of the state of Texas,
of the state of Texas,
and will to the best of my ability
and will to the best of my ability
preserve,
preserve,
protect,
protect,
defend,
defend,
here we go. Preserve of the Constitution
of the Constitution
and the laws of this United States
and the laws of this United States
and this state.
and this state.
So help me God.
So help me God.
My English teacher, now we've got it.
Thanks, Judge.
And I forgot to give them this, so somebody will make sure that they get it. I thought I didn't give somebody public trust, so I appreciate the service of previous board members and current board members, and that you always put our children first. And notice the Montgomery Bears, I'm a little disappointed that nobody else is wearing that. Bobby, it's not being disappointed.
We got a second high school now, Judge. Come on, Blake.
Oh, that's right, come on. So it's Montgomery ISD, huh? I got my crew back here.
You're supposed to get law in order, not create chaos. Come on, Judge. Thank you, Judge Mack. You are a gift. Thank you for being here tonight. And I think we're going to want to have some pictures if you're going to stick around for a little bit. Yeah, we'll do the pictures and then that way. Yeah.
Okay.
Judge Mack and the new board trustees, if y'all could please come up to the front.
And if families would like to join them too, that would be great.
It's picture time.
It's right here, right now.
Is this where you sit?
That's where she sits.
Well, for today.
I'm sorry, I was on silent.
That's so cool.
I know. We should have told you. Yeah, we should have told you. Yeah. So they got you.
Judge, sorry I missed your call. A little late.
That's what the wife said. She called and called and he didn't answer.
We can have, the board members with their families move in front of the horse stand.
Let's get out of here. I'm gonna get out from behind.
Y'all want to step up on the
Yes, up on the horse.
Grab the rest of it.
Why don't you do the new board members first with Judge, and then we're getting all the board members.
You want to do that?
Trying to get me in Title IX.
Waiting one more. One here and there. Discussions here.
disregard the text message at the front door is like, I come in the wrong way.
And one just the teacher. There's no Morrison and Moore.
Thanks, Judge.
Is this his?
Thank you, Judge.
Yes.
And a hearty welcome to our new MISD Board of Trustees. At this time, the board will go into a closed meeting as authorized by the Texas Open Meetings Act under the following Texas Government Code, Section 551.074, to deliberate the appointment of a public officer. I'd like to now call us back into open session. Is there do I have a motion for the office of president?
I'll make a motion that Dr. Fuller be president of the MISD Board.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimous. Congratulations, Dr. Fuller. I want to hear it.
All right, thank you, board members. Is there a nomination or motion for the office of vice president?
I'd like to nominate Gary Hammonds for vice president.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? All right, it passes. Congratulations, Mr. Hammonds. Is there a nomination for the office of secretary?
I'll nominate Linda Porton.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? It passes. All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Are there any public comments tonight?
There is one, President Fuller. I do want to take the opportunity tonight to make sure that our community knows some amazing actions on the part of our county commissioners and Judge Keough. I come in as a new superintendent, getting to hear lots of people say, we're here to help, we're here to support, but actions are always the best demonstration of that support. Judge Keough and his office and the county commissioners really came up large for us several weeks ago. The board several weeks ago engaged in something called Operation Connectivity, where we had the opportunity through a grant with TEA to order over 2,000 devices, much needed devices, for our students. And through that partnership with the county, we were able to get those devices for no charge. And we can't wait for them to come in and get right into the hands of our students. They're desperately needed. So already they were just living up to that motto of doing everything they could to help our schools. Recently, there have been conversations going on with the Montgomery school districts, Judge Keough's office, and the county commissioners. We're utilizing the Federal CARES Act. There was a desire to show how much appreciation there is for our schools, for the challenges that our schools have had to engage in this year in an unprecedented pandemic. And we were really excited to hear that there was a potential to get $40 per student. And Mr. Lynn was already thinking about where that was going to go and how quickly that could be spent. But our commissioners and Judge Keough didn't want to stop there, and then the conversations got up to $200 per student. And today it was an honor, an absolute honor, to represent our district, to be at the county commissioners meeting where Judge Keough and the county commissioners stepped forward to grant each Montgomery County School District $300 per student to help them with all of the expenses and challenges of this year. So could not be more grateful and appreciative of their leadership, their support, and their words today about what education means in Montgomery County. So I know I speak on behalf of my fellow superintendents. We are in the process of sending a very grateful, heartfelt letter on behalf of our school districts to Judge Keough and the county commissioners, but I just wanted to take this opportunity to celebrate them, to thank them for their leadership and their demonstrated action on behalf of our students. So thank you, President.
Awesome, thank you. All right, next we're going to conduct a public hearing on the Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas, the first report. Mr. Lynn.
Take this chair. Matt ruined it. You ruined this chair.
Well, good evening, and new board members. I wish that your first agenda item was a little more exciting than the first report, but it's just the luck of the draw. So, Kim, if we're ready. There we go. All right, so tonight it is my pleasure to present the annual financial management report. That is not the annual financial report that our auditors will report here in just a little bit. This is the Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas, otherwise known as FIRST. This is what this presentation is for. And so just a little background. This is the 18th year of Schools First. And once again, that stands for the Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas. It was developed by TEA in response to Senate Bill 875 of the 76th Texas Legislature. And the goal of the School First program is to achieve quality performance in the management of school district financial resources. We all know that the state financial system in Texas is complicated, and so this system was developed in order to help clarify that for the community a little bit. There are 4 ratings that you can achieve. A is a superior rating, and if you score between 90 and 100 points, that is your rating. B, above standard. C, meet standard, and then anything below 60 is an F, or substandard achievement. And so the rating that we're going to talk about tonight is based on 2018-2019 student, staff, budget, and actual financial data. So there is a little bit of delay in that data and the ratings. The rating is made up of 15 separate performance indicators. Indicators 1 through 4 are either pass or fail, and indicators 6 through 15, you can earn 10 points for each one of those indicators. And before we get through those indicators, I wanted to let you know that MISD scored 94 points, which is an A superior rating for 2018-2019. As I said, there are 15 different indicators. I just want to run through these real fast. Number 1 was the complete annual financial report submitted to TEA within 30 days of the due date. Montgomery ISD's was, so that was a pass. 2A, was there an unmodified opinion in the annual financial report? And there was, so that was a yes, passed. Did the external independent auditor report that the annual financial report was free of any instances of material weaknesses? And for that fiscal year, the answer was yes, so that passed. Indicator number 3, was the school district in compliance with the payment terms of all debt agreements? And yes, Montgomery ISD had paid all debt payments for the year. Did the school district make timely payments to the TRS, Texas Workforce Commission, IRS, and other governmental agencies? And the answer was yes. We fulfilled all of our payroll obligations. Here is where we start getting into the different points based on our responses. Was the number of days of cash on hand and current investments in the general fund sufficient to cover operating expenditures? We had to have at least greater than 90 days of cash on hand in order to score the full 10 points. Montgomery's number of days was 120.537, so we earned 10 points there. Number 7, was the measure of current assets to current liabilities sufficient to cover short-term debt? And you can see that in order to get 10 points, it had to be greater than 3. Montgomery's was 1.7902, so we scored 4 points there out of a possible 10. Indicator 8, was the ratio of long-term liabilities to total assets sufficient to support long-term solvency? This is one that we will need to keep an eye on moving forward, because part of this indicator, you can see our ratio of long-term liabilities was actually 0.9674. However, our student enrollment growth over the last 5 years was above 11%. anything above 7% was an automatic 10-point pass. So this is one of the indicators that we'll need to monitor as we move forward in future fiscal years. Number 9, did the school district's general fund revenues equal or exceed expenditures? And for 18-19, they did. So the district earned 10 points for that indicator. Number 10, was the debt service coverage ratio sufficient to meet the required debt service? And ours was greater than the 1.20 required to get the 10 points. Ours was 1.4653. So once again, a full 10 point on that indicator. This is an interesting one. This is one we always hear about. This is the school district's administrative cost ratio. Was it equal to or less than the threshold ratio? And so the state looks at it based on districts of our size. So the range for us is 5,000 to 9,999 students. In order to get all 10 points, we had to be below 0.10. Montgomery ISD was actually 0.055, so we were about half of that indicator. So once again, good low administrative cost ratio for Montgomery ISD. Did the school district not have a 15% decline in the student to staff ratio over 3 years? And so there was no decline in student to staff ratio, so a full 10 points. Did the comparison of public education information management system, or PEIMS, data result in a total variance of less than 3% of expenditures by function? Due to the fiscal year change that occurred in the 18-19 fiscal year, the district was given a full 10 points because the data could not be compared. So once again, this is another one that we'll have to monitor in future fiscal years to make sure that we're getting our full 10 points. Did the external independent auditor indicate the annual financial report was free of any instances of material noncompliance for grants, contracts, and laws related to local, state, or federal funds? And the annual financial report was free of any of those issues, so a full 10 points there. Number 15, did the school district not receive an adjusted repayment schedule for more than one fiscal year due to a financial hardship? Montgomery ISD did not receive any adjusted payment schedule, so a full 10 points there. This entire presentation, there's a copy on the back table for any community members who were present tonight that want to take that. In addition, we will be posting this on the district's website. On the financial department website, there's a section called Financial Transparency, and it will be posted there. The full report includes all of the required submissions for board expenditures and superintendent expenditures related to training, and it also contains the superintendent's contract as required by law. Okay, so that is the presentation this evening. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
All right, thank you.
Mr. Lynn. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to pull any items from the consent agenda for discussion? All right, hearing that, is there a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda?
I recommend that the board approve the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? It passes. Awesome. It's the first time we've gotten the consent agenda done right, so we wanted to get that out of the way. All right, moving on to action items. We're going to have Mr. Lynn back for considering the approval of purchase of attendance credits, which aligns with our third goal.
All right, good evening again. So this is a repeat from last month's board meeting. We had asked the board to approve option 3 to purchase attendance credits from the state. Whenever we went to actually submit the documents to TEA, there had been a change in the requirements with the wording for the board motion. So what we need to do tonight is, once again, to approve this action, but to actually use the recommendation that is there in your board packet. That is the motion that I need for the board minutes to say in order for us to be in compliance with this item.
Are there any questions? Do I have a motion for the amended language?
I'll move. I move that the 2020-2021 school year, we delegate contractual authority to obligate the school district under Texas Education Code 11.1511C4 to the superintendent solely for the purpose of obligating the district under TEC 48.257 and TEC Chapter 49, Subchapters A and D, and the rules adopted by the Commissioner of Education is authorized under TEC 49.006. This includes approval of the agreement for the purchase of attendant credit or the agreement for the purchase of attendance credit netting Chapter 48 funding.
Perfect.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Thank you.
Mr. Kirby seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? It passes. Thank you, Mr. Lynn.
Thank you.
And next, we are going to consider the approval of a 2019-2020 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, which also aligns with Goal Free, and also Mr. Lynn.
Yes, so this evening I have the privilege of introducing to you Sarah Roberts and Matt Rogers, auditors from Weaver. They are the group that has been conducting the district's annual financial audit. Remember, our fiscal year started July 1 of 2019 and ended June 30 of 2020. And so I'm going to turn the mic over to them and let them present to you their findings.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello.
Evening.
And congratulations to the new board members and new positions on the board. It's nice to be back. Thank you for the introduction. All right, I put together a brief agenda for us tonight, starting with some introductions mostly for the new board members. And then I'll go into an overview of the audit process, the audit scope, the standards under which we perform the audit, and our results and findings. Finally, I'll review the fiscal year 2020 financial statements. I'll just touch on some of the high points. I have questions here as a last bullet point, but I'm happy to take questions at any time. If it so strikes you to speak up and ask a question, I'm definitely open to that. So introductions, my name is Sarah Roberts. I'm a CPA and I'm an audit partner with Weaver. I'm based in our Houston office. We have with us Matt Rogers sitting over here. He's a CPA and a senior manager based in our Conroe office. I've been with Weaver since 2008, and I've been working on the district's audit in some capacity for a little over 10 years. I've been the audit partner on the engagement for 4 years now. Matt joined Weaver in 2016 via a merger, and he's been working in the manager role on the district's audit for 4 years as well. I've included here a summary of our CPE for the last 2 years measurement period. Matt and I are both heavily focused on training and development within our firm. We stay up to date on new standards, audit requirements, best practices, things of that nature. And so we approach every audit through that lens of the focus on audit quality. Combined, we have over 160 hours of governmental specific CPE in the last measurement period. For comparison, the government auditing standards requirement is 24 hours. So we stay well above that standard requirement. I wanted to include some information about Weaver for any of you who may not be familiar with us. We are proud to call ourselves the firm of Texas. We audit 50 school districts annually, more than 50 I should say, including all 5 of the 5 largest school districts in Texas. We have over 120 dedicated government professionals, and we consistently rank among the top CPA firms locally, regionally, and nationally. I've included here a summary of our audit timeline. We have some discrete milestones that we meet each year, but really we see it as a continuous process. We encourage communication with our clients year-round, and we stay available for any questions or issues that come up. Before going into our results, I wanted to talk a little bit about our roles and responsibilities in the audit. The type of audit that we performed is called a single audit. The audit is performed in accordance with uniform guidance, which requires that we adhere to government auditing standards, as well as AICPA auditing standards. Those standards require that we remain independent of the entity, which means, at the end of the day, that we can't act in the capacity of management, and I've listed here some bullet points of the things that we can't do. We can, however, provide recommendations and observations, and it's ultimately up to management as to whether to implement those recommendations. A single audit has two components. There's an audit of the financial statements and an audit of federal awards. The financial statement audit, as I mentioned, is performed in accordance with GAGAS, which is Government Auditing Standards, as well as GAS, which is the AICPA auditing standards. Our audit includes tests of the district's compliance with provisions of laws and regulations. The federal award component is conducted in accordance with uniform guidance, and this is specific to federal awards, which are related to the financial statements. There's some crossover, but there's a specific focus there. At the conclusion of our audit, we issue 3 reports. The first 2 pertain to the financial statement audit, and the third pertains to federal awards. Our first is our report on the financial statements, in which we express our opinion on the fair presentation of the financial statements. Our second is our government auditing standards, or Yellow Book report, which addresses internal controls and compliance as it relates to the financial statements. And lastly, we have our uniform guidance report, in which we provide our opinion on compliance and describe our testing of internal controls and compliance as it relates to federal awards. In addition to our reports, we are required to communicate certain matters related to our audit. The first type of matter would be a reportable finding. These are required to be included in the annual financial report, and I've listed here the types of findings that we would be required to include here. Any other matters that are required by our professional standards are communicated in a separate written communication, which has been provided to you. We had 2 reportable findings this year, which I'll go into in detail shortly. First, I wanted to give you an overview of just our general audit results. Going over our 3 reports again, our first one, we issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, which is a clean opinion, which is the highest level of assurance that we can give that the financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with U.S. GAAP. Our report on internal control over financial reporting, this is where we had a couple of reportable findings, including 1 material weakness, 1 significant deficiency, but no instances of material noncompliance. Our federal awards report on compliance and internal control over compliance, again, here we issued an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion, no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, or other audit findings required to be reported with respect to federal awards. Our major program this year was a special education IDEA B program, which resulted in coverage of approximately 45% of total federal expenditures. And again, no findings with respect to these federal awards. So going into our findings, the first one, like I mentioned, is a material weakness in internal control. I've included here the definition of material weakness, which is a deficiency or combination of deficiencies such that there's a reasonable possibility that a material misstatement of the entity's financial statements will not be prevented or detected and corrected on a timely basis. And so our experience during the audit is that we did find some material misstatements of the financial statements, specifically pertaining to the Series 2019 refunding bonds. There were some errors in accounting for that bond issuance. We also found that the district's issuance costs were overpaid by about $28,000, resulting from a duplicate payment. We also found material misstatements with respect to special revenue funds, all of which were corrected, so the draft of the financials that you see reflects the correct accounting for these items. To provide some additional context, we were aware coming into this audit that there had been an extended vacancy in the CFO or finance director position during the year, in addition to some personnel turnover closer to the end of the year. So we were not surprised, to be frank with you. The vacancy in such a key position naturally results in a level of oversight that is probably not sufficient. So our recommendation there was to support the finance department, increase staffing, increase training to prevent these types of misstatements going forward. Our next finding is classified as a significant deficiency in internal control. And that's defined as a deficiency or combination of deficiencies that is less severe than a material weakness, but still important enough to merit attention by those charged with governance. So we're not talking about a material misstatement here, but still something that is serious enough and significant enough to bring to your attention. And this is about the CTE expenditures. So what happened here was early on in the audit process, it was brought to our attention that there had been a decrease in CTE expenditures, and there were concerns about the compliance implications around that. Like I said, brought to our attention early on, and we appreciate that transparency. We looked into the matter, and what we found was that during the budgeting process or subsequently, there were adjustments to decrease the level of expenditures, and the CTE Foundation allotments have a 55% direct expenditure requirement. The reduction in expenditures should have raised a flag that brought to the attention this concern about compliance. When these expenditures with an attached expenditure requirement are reduced, there should have been a flag raised that this could be a problem. And apparently that flag wasn't raised, or if it was raised, the response was not adequate. So that's why we're reporting a significant deficiency here. And our recommendation is to improve the budgetary and monitoring process to ensure that this doesn't happen again. My last item is the financial statements. I'm happy to address any questions at this point, though, if you have any. Okay. All right, so here's an overview of the financial statements. There's various components. Each schedule is detailed in the table of contents. So if you have an interest in particular information, it's all detailed and laid out with schedule references, page numbers, all of that. So you should be able to find what you're looking for. I'm going to focus on just the high points that are typically of most interest. The general fund balance sheet, total fund balance at the end of fiscal year 20 was about $19.7 million. Unassigned was about 99.9% of that. Compared to last year, $19.73 million. Unassigned, still 99.9% of that. So the decrease in fund balance was about $32,000. Pretty small decrease, relatively stable year over year. Governmental fund, the general fund statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balances. This is the income statement. Total expenditures were about $76.7 million. Like I mentioned, the decrease in fund balance was about $32,000. Unassigned fund balance as a percent of expenditures was about 25.7%, which represents about 3 months of expenditures, which is generally considered a pretty healthy level. Compared to last year, expenditures were $70 million. Unassigned fund balance as a percent of expenditures was 28%. The most significant changes were that expenditures increased by about $6.5 million. It's been mentioned before that fiscal year 2019 was a 10-month fiscal period compared to 10 to 12 months this year, so naturally there was an increase in expenditures. The most significant was payroll and wages increased by about $8 million. There was also an expenditure of about $675,000 related to the junior high school damage. And then also there was a decrease in expenditures related to the $3.8 million recapture payment last year that did not recur this year. Moving on to the budgetary comparison schedule, revenues, the actual final revenues were about $336,000 over budget, expenditures were about $404,000 under budget, and the net change in fund balance ended up to be almost $1.7 million over budget. Compared to last year, the variances were in the $1 million range, so you can see the budget has become refined and tighter. Variances ultimately less than 1% this year. All right, moving on to the statement of net position. The statement of net position is what's referred to as a government-wide statement, and that means that we are taking all of the funds of the government and combining them into one view, and then adding in the long-term assets and long-term liabilities, which are not included in the fund financial statements. So I'm showing here a comparison of the major classes of assets and liabilities. Total net position decreased from a deficit last year of $51 million to a deficit this year of $61 million. Net position is further broken down into 3 components: net investment in capital assets, which is a deficit, deficit increased this year to $21 million, and I'll touch on that in a second to kind of describe why that's negative. The restricted component remained relatively consistent. This is the amount restricted for grants and debt service. And then unrestricted is also in a deficit, remained pretty stable year over year. It's worth noting that the unrestricted component of net position includes the district's pension and OPEB liabilities, which are actuarial estimates, which typically analysts and any other interested party will typically remove these from net position to come up with a more comparable view. So if you do that, you can see that the district's change in unrestricted net position was actually positive, $2.5 million, which is a good sign. All right, net position and capital assets, I mentioned I would come back to this. What that represents is the balance of capital assets, net of accumulated depreciation, minus the outstanding balance of the debt used to finance those assets. The district has remaining debt maturities through 2046, and capital assets are depreciated on a straight line basis over 5 to 40 years. So debt payments last year were $7.7 million versus depreciation expense of about $13 million. So you can see that the assets are being depreciated much more quickly than the debt is being paid off. This is approximately what that looks like. The asset line is the darker orange and the debt is the lighter one. And you can see that the assets are declining pretty much in a straight line basis, where the debt line is a little bit curved. I think you'll see that cross in about 2045. So you'll be looking at a negative number for probably 20 more years. And then finally, the OPEB and the pension. I mentioned these are significant estimates. So included in the notes to the financial statements is a sensitivity analysis of those estimates. And you can see that with respect to the pension, a 1% decrease or increase in the discount rate could result in a swing of anywhere within a range of $20 million. The OPEB, same deal, the discount rate and the healthcare trend cost rate are significant inputs in those estimates, and a swing in either of those, or a decrease or increase by 1% in either of those could result in a similar swing. That's it. Any questions?
Questions for Mr.?
Just one real quick to address the significant deficiency. So
Sure.
in the part that was the concern there, it was the misallocation of funds, but not the money was there, it was put in the wrong spot.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So if we go back, to this slide, the second line item is state program revenues. So that's where the CTE funds and any other state special program revenue is included. So it's included in the revenue and it's allocated among the various functions and programs. And the issue was that that allocation was decreased, which could potentially cause compliance implications. We're not in a position to determine those actual compliance implications, that's the TEA. But we are able to conclude that there was an issue, a failure of internal controls to identify and prevent this issue.
Ms. Roberts, I have a question for Mr. Lynn, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Mr. Lynn, what are we going to do to ensure that we don't have that problem again, that we have these internal controls corrected?
Sure. So from my standpoint, obviously this was a difficult situation walking into with the CFO position being vacant from basically November till April when I got here. But since that time, I think I was one of the people who initially identified the CTE issue, and I did not make any bones about trying to bring that to people's attention. So as we move forward, the special program allotments in the foundation school program, the 2020-2021 budget was adopted and constructed appropriately. Knowing that those expenditure requirements are set by TEA, we actually budgeted more in each one of those special program allotments to make sure that those expenditures meet TEA's guidelines. In addition, we will monitor those expenditures quarterly to make sure that the expenditures are tracking appropriately so that we don't wind up in this situation at the end of the year. As far as the misstatements with regards to the bond refunding series. That took place back in October of 2019, once again, before I got here. But in order to address that situation, we are increasing the level of staffing, training for the finance staff, getting them appropriate training for their specific skill sets. In addition, there is a recommendation that will be coming to you later this evening about augmenting the finance staff with a degreed accountant to assist to make sure that our financial statements are accurately reported. So from my standpoint, and I'll let Ms. Roberts speak from her standpoint, but I believe that the issues that were identified in the 1920 audit at this point, as we stand here tonight, have already been corrected for the 2020-2021 fiscal year.
Could I ask, does the material weakness or the deficiency, does that affect our accreditation?
It doesn't affect our accreditation, but as you heard earlier tonight on agenda item number 5, part of our financial integrity rating system of Texas, the first rating, is based on some audit information. And so one of those questions is, was there a material weakness identified? And so with material weakness being identified in this audit, as we stand here next year at this time, our first rating will be significantly lower. So as we mentioned tonight, our rating for 18-19 was an A, and Ms. Roberts can correct me if I'm wrong, but based on the information that I have, based on the audit findings that were presented tonight, skip forward a year, the highest rating that we can present for our first rating will be a C.
Is that principally due to those two findings?
Yes, because of those findings, that's the highest allowable rating that we can have. And then, of course, there are some other, as I pointed out when I was going through the presentation, there are a couple of other items that we're going to have to pay close attention to see if that rating, drops a little bit more. But once again, I know this is being taped, and I know there's people who are going to see this later. I want the community to understand this was a difficult situation walking into with a position being vacant for so long, but corrective measures have already been put into effect to keep those issues from happening as we move forward. This board and this community has my full power behind it to make sure that these issues don't happen again. It was definitely uncomfortable for Dr. Morrison and I to hear the results of this audit, but because we take this job very seriously, and I can't make any promises, but you will have my sincere gesture that these types of issues will not continue to happen in the future.
Mr. Lang, can I just ask as a follow-up, I just want to make sure that the material findings we've presented a corrective action plan?
Yes, since there were two findings in this year's audit, we were required to present a corrective action plan, which we have done. And so the auditors have that information, and it will be a part of the annual financial audit. But those corrective actions, like I said, discuss additional staffing for the financial department, which hopefully will be taken care of later tonight, additional training, and then, as I mentioned, with the CTE and other state program allotments, those issues have already been corrected in the 2021
And then,
budget.
Mr. Lynn, we know sometimes our public will look at one document from one year to another. Why would the audit look different this year as opposed to last year?
Sure. So in the past, the district has had a practice of producing what is called a comprehensive annual financial report, otherwise known as a CAFR. The purpose of producing that document is to submit it for some type of financial reporting award. And so there's two entities that we would report that to. One would be the GFOA, and the other would be ASBO. Given the nature of the information contained in this year's audit and the fact that there is an expense incurred by submitting the audit to those entities for award and recognition, Dr. Morrison and I have discussed and made the decision to withhold the financial audit from submitting that to those entities for an award. It just doesn't feel right. You know, as Dr. Morrison has said during this COVID, it's hard to reconcile how we would submit an audit where we did not do our best to an entity and pay them to try and obtain an award that says we are doing our best. And so we want to implement some internal controls as obviously as we need to do. We want to focus moving forward on a very transparent budget process and then get our financial documents at the highest order, and then we will revisit that issue at some point in the future.
And to our board, especially our new board members, we have pledged a very transparent budget process. That means not only transparency to this board, but to this community. We will be going out to our schools, to our communities to share what we know about our budgets, to get input from our stakeholders to see what they would like to have happen in our budget, and to own where we have not delivered, and to get their hopes and wishes for future budget opportunities. On December the 2nd, you will have the first of a budget workshop. Mr. Hammond, not a retreat, but a budget workshop, actually a board workshop, where we will talk about the budget process, get your input into how you'd like to see us proceed. But by the time that Mr. Lynn and I present the budget to you for our upcoming year, it should really be a non-event, because there will be lots of opportunities for you to question, provide guidance, provide input, and to provide the opportunity for our community to have that input, so that by the time the recommendation comes from me and becomes your budget, it's a budget that we can stand behind, that we can be proud of, and that it is our hope that we will be able to have a much better auditing process in the future.
Yes, sir.
So auditing processes is one thing, but systemic issues are another. So are there any other things that concern you about this audit, other than these two large items, which seem to possibly look at other things down within the how we're managing our finances as a district?
Right. Not in regards to the audit, okay? But it's going to take me a little time to invest some training for the people of the department. Okay, in the past, it appears that maybe the training of the staff has not been to the level that this board or this community would expect, and so developing the internal controls within the finance department is where I'm going to spend the majority of my time moving forward, so to correct these issues and to prevent these issues that you've heard about tonight. Unfortunately, those things happen sometimes when staff is not trained adequately for the duties that they're doing, and when there is some transfer of staff between positions. But so that's where I'm focusing my energy, is correcting these internal controls within the department to keep those things from happening.
Other questions? Ms. Roberts, I have one last question. If, with all that Mr. Lynn has already done, does that float your boat? Does that look good to you?
It does look good to me. I think the corrective actions are appropriate, and we discussed them and we worked together, and I certainly appreciate the collaboration. I know it was a challenging year, and the transparency and the receptiveness to our findings and our suggestions. I think that the corrective actions taken are directly responsive to the conditions that existed. So yes, to answer your question, I think they're appropriate.
Thank you. And then Mr. Lynn, last question for me, I promise. You said that we're going to track this quarterly. When's our first quarterly report going to be? When are you coming back to us, Chris?
Well, your first board quarterly update will be December the 2nd, so we'll have some information for you at that meeting, and also lay out a draft of our budget process for the 21-22 budget development cycle and ask for your input and guidance on how to make that process transparent and collaborative with all district stakeholders, community stakeholders, and so that we don't want there to be secrets. So,
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, next
well,
on.
we do need a motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the 2019-2020 annual financial report as presented?
I'll move to accept the 2019-2020 annual financial report as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? It passes.
Just one point of privilege before I give up the mic. I just want to personally thank Ms. Roberts and Mr. Rogers for their help. As they said, they kind of understated it. It was a very difficult audit process this year, not only with COVID, but because of the shape that the financials were in. They were always there to take my phone call and to offer assistance when needed. This was my first time to work with their firm, but just wanted to give them a public thank you and pat on the back for their assistance and their help during this process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we're moving on to information items. And first up, we will have the first reading on a local policy on performance of appraisal and evaluation of campus administrators.
Thank you, Dr. Fuller. Our Chief Financial Officer said several times transparency, and transparency can't just be words, it has to be actions. And when we discover that we have not been following board policy, we have to bring that forward to this board, explain what happened as best we would know why it happened, and then more importantly, what are we doing about it. As we began the evaluation process this year for our campus administrators, we discovered that the process that had been used for the last several years, right, specifically the last 4 years, was not in adherence with board policy. In 2016, this board chose to vote on a specific evaluation process for campus principals called PPAS, which is in alignment with the state document, which is in alignment with how teachers are evaluated. The district for the last several years has been using a local evaluation instrument and therefore out of compliance with board policy. As we start this evaluation cycle this year, we're in a challenge because the dilemma is I have a policy that says I have to use an instrument that no one has been trained on how to utilize, and those 10 campus administrators have not been trained or overviewed in terms of how they would be evaluated. An evaluation process is not wholly reliant on the instrument, but the instrument is the evaluation document that becomes part of a historical artifact and part of a person's record. And we have to take it with utmost seriousness, and the process has to be one we could be proud of. And so as I come before you tonight, I have the dilemma of we have a practice that is out of compliance with policy, and I can't simply say we'll start following the policy and be fair to our campus administrators. So the dilemma is, and my request to this board is to be allowed to use the local instrument that we have been using for many years, specifically at least the last 4 years. And we will do a first reading of that tonight. And then we would come back in December for you to vote on that instrument. And then my commitment to this board is over the next several months, we will be looking for the best evaluation instrument that will lend to a process that will do what we need to do in terms of evaluation processes that are fair, that evaluate people against a specific standard, that grow leaders in a way that will make sure that our 10 campuses and our senior staff are being able to do the things that are pledged to in the strategic direction of our school district. I can tell you that's what happened. I can't tell you why it has happened, except all I can do is say we are trying to correct that with this action tonight. And I will take any questions that you have.
So you said that we in our policy, it states that we use TPAS and,
TPAS.
TPAS, and, we're using, in the past 4 years, we've been using our own process. Now, is that a process we developed, or was it a just totally different process than TPAS?
There's a process and there's an instrument, and we've been using a locally developed instrument for a number of years. I believe that there was a thought that because we are a district of innovation, and in the district of innovation, if you look in the wording of the district of innovation policies and plan, it speaks to an evaluation instrument that is more robust than the state instrument. I think that's challenging to look at that instrument and look at what has been produced by the state and actually feel comfortable about making that statement. But I do believe that that is the rationale for why that instrument was used. But again, the instrument is not part of what's in board policy.
So are you just going to, we're going to continue to use what we're using now and transition into a new instrument?
Yeah, I have to evaluate our campus administrators this year, in fairness to them, to introduce, even if we could get trained, and we have been in numerous conversations with Region 6 about getting trained on TPAS as quickly as possible. But even if we try to get trained in the next month to 2 months, it would be incredibly unfair to our campus principals to introduce them to an evaluation process and an instrument that they are not familiar with. So we will get trained, my team, as well as our campus administrators and assistant principals as well. We're working with Region 6 on when best to do that. But we don't want to just simply go to TPAS and say that's where we ought to leave it. We want to find a great instrument and a great process. We've also been having conversations with Dr. Fairman and OHI, and there's a way to maybe embed that into TPAS, so we would be using a process aligned with how our teachers are evaluated in a way that would also bring greater clarity to the evaluation process. Again, the instrument, I don't want to minimize the instrument. The instrument is important, but an evaluation is not an event, it is a process. And so it's how we chart that process out, that we have rubrics and guidelines and metrics that are fair and that both the evaluator and the evaluatee feel good about, and that ultimately it helps the person being evaluated grow either to satisfactory, above satisfactory, or to exemplary.
Questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Morrison.
Thank you.
All right, next information item. Report on your entry plan, Dr. Morrison.
Yes, sir. All right. Come down here if that's okay. This is a little different. Well, good evening, board. I want to once again congratulate our new board members. It is going to be an amazing journey that we take together as a team of 8, and congratulations to our new board officers. We have a lot of work to do, but it is exceptionally amazing work that we are gifted to have this opportunity. And we're gifted to do it here in Montgomery ISD. And I felt that way coming in as the new superintendent, and I feel even more strongly having been on the job for the last several months. And so when I was going through the process of being interviewed and then being named the lone finalist, I promised the board that I was not going to come in with the plan. I was going to come in with a plan of entry. And by that I mean a commitment to listen and to learn, and not to be so presumptuous that the things I've done in prior districts will work here, or the things I learned in the private sector immediately have to be implemented, but to take this truly amazing district, to listen to our stakeholders, listen to our public, listen to our employees, and to figure out that journey of where we are to where we want to be, and to do that collaboratively, collectively, and positively together. Now, sometimes when you report out on your entry plan, people are like, wow, you've come up for a couple months and all you've done is listen. And I have done a lot of listening. I'm going to speak to that in a second. But we've also done a lot of action, and I'm very proud of our team. Both those individuals that report to me as my senior staff and our principals and our employees. It's been an unprecedented year with COVID-19, and everything that we thought that we knew about opening schools, about conducting elementary and secondary campuses and getting our students on a pathway to graduation, everything has had to be rethought. And so there's been a lot of action. As the new superintendent, you put a high water mark on having a great school opening. Well, we had to have 4. We not only introduced students all remotely, but then had phased openings of pre-K and kindergarten, then welcoming 6th and 9th graders, and then welcoming all of our students back who chose in-person traditional instruction on September the 8th, as well as continuing to serve those students who chose remote instruction. We made a commitment to this board and this community. We were not going to try to be perfect, but we were going to try to be excellent, and I could not be prouder of our employees. We have one of the highest percentages of students who have returned for in-campus traditional instruction, not only, I believe, in Montgomery County, but anywhere in the state of Texas. And we've had a very low rate of having to quarantine students and keep them home because of COVID. Now, I say that knocking on some wood because we know everything that's happening across our state and country with COVID. But again, there's an incredible diligence to the safety of our students and staff. Additionally, we have tried to look at all the ways to better serve our students, whether they're in person or remote, and that's been everything from utilizing fewer platforms to make it easier on our parents, to ordering additional devices, to trying to increase our capacity to deliver technology in a better, a more robust way, and then to listen to our employees and try to do everything we can to ease their burden. So being able to find the way to have dedicated remote teachers at the elementary level so that teachers are not having to do a hybrid instructional model, but then having that hybrid instructional model certainly having to happen at the secondary level, but then thinking out of the box, realizing that listening to our teachers, what they needed most was time, and introducing recently the initiative of a late arrival Wednesday, which so far we're hearing a lot of positives about. We have continued to the work that was started prior to my arrival as a superintendent, but we were able to present a balanced budget to this board, something that has been incredibly important, and then to go a step further and to have the board vote on raises that were desperately needed. And as I said at the time when we presented it, it's been a lot of work to get to where we felt comfortable presenting raises, but that's a down payment on the work that we know we have to do. We finished the work that was started prior on the board's goals, going from 4 goals to 5 that you voted on tonight. And now the work begins on the strategic plan. And in that time, we also hired a new director of communications who is with us tonight, Mr. Justin Moreno, and we have our new chief of police, Stephen Phillips. And so lots of things happening, more, but really this is about the entry plan, and it's about my commitment of listening and learning, and what I want to do tonight is share some of the many, many things that I've learned coming in as your new superintendent. So Stephen Covey says, seek first to understand, then to be understood. I'm disappointed Dr. Bartlett isn't here tonight because her school was just recognized as a lighthouse school. Much about the pathways that Dr. Covey has introduced in 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. But this has always been something that resonates with me. A lot of times when we say we're listening, we're really listening just enough to tell people what we think rather than listening to what they think. And if we are going to be the board and team of 8 and superintendent that this community deserves, then our commitment to serving has to be a commitment to listening. And so I've tried to do that. I've been to every school multiple times, meeting with the principals, meeting with the administrative staff, meeting with guidance counselors, meeting with teachers, meeting with all staff, getting out across our central services, meeting with each and every PTO, sometimes in person, sometimes remotely, and then just a tremendous treat getting a chance to meet our student groups, our boosters, just doing a lot of listening about what people love about this district and what they think could be better. We've had dedicated town halls. We've had a number of different town halls, and that's been a little bit different in a world of COVID because we haven't had as many as we'd like to have, and we've had to socially distance and do all the things that we have to do. But again, wearing a mask doesn't mean we can't listen, and so each of those town halls has been a gift. And then meeting with many, many individuals in small groups, whether it's service organizations like Rotary or Lions Club or larger opportunities like the Chamber. Any group that has said we'd like you to come and to tell you what we think about the school district, I've tried to be there. I think at this point, had 328 individual conversations with different stakeholders in Montgomery ISD, current employees, former employees, parents, former parents, anyone that cares about our district that said we'd like to talk. I have tried to listen. And I want to thank our board because you've said, hey, would you mind talking to this person? And I've talked to that person. They've given me 3 other people to talk to. And again, that listening has truly been a gift. So as I think about this opportunity to come and listen and learning, as a superintendent and as a leader, you have to be able to say, this is where our organization is. This is how we arrived at this point. And then more importantly, where is our organization going? And so as I came in to our school district and tried to get a better understanding of this district that so many people love, and what is the mission and vision of this school district, I struggled a little bit trying on our website, and I've talked to Justin about that already, to find the specific vision and mission. But as I tried to look through the words, it really seemed to me that we were making a pledge, an oath, a commitment to being about every child, serving them with excellence, and preparing them for the future. So my question was always, what does that mean to you as a stakeholder? And you know, a lot of times people want to tell you all the things that should change, and a lot of times people want to tell you all the reasons why things should be different. And there has to be a combination. We are going to go on a journey of change, but one of the things I learned a long time ago, the only people who jump up and say, I want change, are wet babies. And so you have to make the case for change. I see you laughing under there, Dr. Fuller. I'm here all week, by the way. So you have to make the case for change, and you have to make sure that people feel that there is input into that change, and it's not the change that I think is best, but it's the change collectively that we, as a board and a governance team of 8, and our community feel is what's in the best interest of our students. We want to be the premier school district in the state of Texas, and those have been great words. I love the words. But now we have to define, what does it mean to be the premier, not a premier, but the premier school district in Texas. And we're really good. We are really a good school district. But if you've read the book, Good to Great by Jim Collins, he puts forward the proposition that good is the enemy of great. And we don't want to be great for platitudes and awards. We want to be great for just about 9,000 reasons, and that's the students that we have the honor and privilege of serving. So as I've met with these groups, more often than not, we've engaged in what's known as a SWOT activity, asking, what do you as stakeholders believe are the strengths of our district? What are the weaknesses? What are the opportunities to improve? That may be simply correcting the weaknesses, or it may be areas that were good but could be better. And then what are threats that we need to be cognizant of? I have been astounded, having done this several times in the public sector and some in the private sector, the consistency of what this community, whether it was employees, former employees, administrators, private sector, faith-based community, whoever, service leaders across our community have said about our school district. Overwhelmingly, every time I ask a question, what's great about our school district? It's our teachers and our employees, without question, every time. Followed up by great students, engaged students that we're privileged to be able to serve. And then leadership, whether that's our campus principals, streamlined district leadership, our instructional coaches, but great leaders who want to support great teachers and support staff in service of students. That there is strong community support, and I have said this from the time of coming in. It's not unusual to find a community that loves its school. We love our Bears, we love our Lions, but even those people that support the Lions or support the Bears, they all still, well, maybe not Judge Mack, but everybody supports Montgomery ISD. And we can't take that for granted. The minute we start taking it for granted is the minute we lose it, and we can't do that. And then also recognition that we have high-quality facilities, not necessarily where we want them, but we have 10 campuses that we can be proud of, and we've got a great start on making them even better. Now, we've got strengths, and we've got a tremendous number of strengths. But there have been identified weaknesses, and I think tonight it's appropriate as we present a budget to you and an audit that is not what we wanted to. But the budget process has been identified as a challenge for our school district. The inability to have a balanced budget over the last several years, a perception of a lack of transparency. How do we develop the budget? Who made those the priorities? And why have we not made competitive wages for our employees a stronger portion of our budget? I say this all the time. Our school budget is no more complicated than a household budget. We decide what's important. We look at how much is coming in. We decide how much is going out. And we prioritize the most important things. And we have to demonstrate to our community what we see as a priority, why we feel those are the priority, and budget to those things. Technology has not been lifted up as a strong point, and I am very proud of our team. There's been a lot of changes very quickly to our technology, but everything from a lack of infrastructure to a lack of devices to a lack of training for our employees, we need to do better in a 21st century model of instruction around technology. Lack of processes and systems. If you think about our school district like a house, the front of the house with the teachers and the principals and the staff are great. But the back of the house, the processes and systems for how we support the front, we have a lot of work to do, and that's work that we will do together. Communications, that commitment to listening, that commitment to being transparent and be honest with our community and to actively and proactively share what we're doing, why we're doing it, and when we mess up, yes, we messed up, and here's how, here's why, and here's what we're doing about it. It's a big thing that has been lifted up as a weakness. And then this was one that was very interesting, but constantly, where people want us to be better than we are, and they want us to be the premier school district. But talk about what that means and set a course and set a direction for that we can all get behind as a community and as employees in service of our 9,000 students. Opportunities. We've got great CTE programs. They can be better. They have to be better. We want a growth mindset that is honoring the things that we've done in the past, but being bold to continue to make innovation and improvement. We have a foundation, and it's done good things. It needs to do great things, and I'm excited about where that could go. Collaboration with follow-through, that we're pretty good sometimes about going out and asking people for their opinion, but not coming back to tell them why we couldn't do it, or better yet, taking that input, being authentic about it, and following those suggestions. And then innovation. We are a district of innovation, but we struggle to say what that means. And so if we're going to be a district of innovation, we should be a leader, and we should be proactive in that commitment for the sake of being better. And there are threats, and we know one of them is a lack of competitive salaries for our truly great staff. We have fallen behind, and to the point where even those individuals who love our school district, they love teaching here, they love leading here, they love driving buses, and they love feeding our kids. But our salaries have fallen to the point where people are starting to look, and the minute we lose those truly amazing employees of our school district is where that A district that we're very proud of starts to falter. So we have work to do there. Every community struggles with a vocal minority, but sometimes we're a little bit overreactive to it. And we've got to do a commitment to really trying to get a sense of what are they trying to tell us? Where are we faltering, and where do we have strengths? And not just because it's the person with the loudest voice, but it's truly because we have individuals who care about our district, and we have that true commitment to listening and learning. We have got to continue to do everything we can to reduce the workload and stress on our staff. It is an unprecedented year, and every one of our staff members is feeling it. Every one of our staff members is being heroic and heroic throughout it. But if we just take that for granted, then we will lose our employees. And so doing everything we can to reduce stress on our employees as they're servicing our students is of utmost importance. Number 4 is something we have truly struggled in terms of how to put it on paper, because I've heard everything from being a closed district to a good old boy district to a perception of insider culture. And really what has been lifted up to me as a new superintendent is that we are not transparent, that we advertise positions when we feel like advertising them, that we use a process for hiring when it's convenient, that we do things for the short term without thinking about the bigger term, and that if we're going to be the premier school district in Texas, that we've got to be open. And by that, we mean that we have got to have a commitment of hiring the very best. More often than not, yes, someone with a connection with Montgomery ISD, but let's advertise the position, hire the right way, do it consistently, do it transparently. That we have a budget process that's not behind closed doors, that we go out to the community, ask for their input, share what we're learning in real time, and again, that commitment to listening, learning, and sharing, and not doing it in a way that people think that we're trying to hide something. And then the state legislation and budget. We know that when the legislature comes back in session in the new year, that there are going to be some challenges. Our state is suffering, as our country is suffering with this pandemic, and it has had an impact on the economy, and so therefore it potentially can have an impact on our school district. And so we can't just wait to see what happens. As a team of 8 and as a board, a legislative platform with what you want to see happen in Austin, that we are a premier district taking a leadership role and giving voice and advocacy for our students, and to be not passive, but advocates for our school district and our students. So what does it all mean? Well, you passed goals tonight, and that's exciting. Goals are important. The performance objectives that accompany those goals are important. But now the work begins on creating a strategic plan that truly will unite our community and give all of our employees a sense of direction about where we are and where we're going and why. Goal 1 is about our commitment to servicing every child, and every child means every child. So how do we continue to get the students who are thriving in our schools to continue to thrive? How do we better serve our special education students and our gifted students? How do we commit to our great programs like CTE, or our gifted programs, or our dual language, and make them even better? And how do we commit to getting every student to walk across the stage and get a diploma that's a passport for a better tomorrow? Goal 2 is our commitment to safety. In some ways, it's our most important priority. How do we commit to making sure that we're doing everything we can to keep our students and staff safe? And certainly, in a world of COVID, we sometimes forget that there have been school shootings. And the minute that we not are diligent about that, we open ourselves up to not keeping our campuses safe. And so in December, we will present our safety audits that were just conducted. And overall, that audit will be much better than the audit that was presented tonight. But there is still a challenge that we have to feel deeply each and every day. And that's not only the physical safety of our students and staff, but it's the social, emotional, it's the psychological, and it is, in fact, what we do to keep safety during a global pandemic. Goal 3 is a commitment to being efficient and effective with our resources. We are gifted with a community that has chosen to support our public education system well, with resources that also come from the state and the federal government. How do we ensure the effectiveness and efficiency of those resources on behalf of all of our students and our staff? Goal 4 is our commitment to our people. It's how we go out and make that sincere focus around hiring the very best, proactively recruiting amazing people to our district. Once hired, how do we train them? How do we commit to their professional growth? How do we evaluate them fairly, transparently, and with board policy always in mind? And then how do we create a professional growth system that will really keep our great leaders here, keep our great employees and teachers here, and make it so that we can follow a model of when we have professional growth opportunities, we can hire 75% from within and sometimes go outside when we need to. And then goal 5 is really about the 3 C's: communication, customer service, and culture. It's about making sure that our district has a strong culture, that our employees feel valued, that our parents feel heard, and our students feel welcomed and expected. It's about our commitment to proactively communicate with our community, and that means starting off with a commitment to listening and then sharing and showing that we've heard our community. And customer service. You know, it used to be that when you moved into a school district, where you lived is where you went to school. And except if you could access private education, there was a very little competition. Well, today there's online schools, there's charter schools, there's more private schools. There's competition. And we have to earn our business in Montgomery ISD, or we'll find ourselves losing students, and we don't want to do that. So as you have passed those 5 goals, we are creating 5 task forces. Each task force will be aligned to one of those 5 goals. Each task force will be led by a member of my senior team and 1 or 2 of our campus principals. And each task force will have students, teachers, staff, community leaders, and parents representing all 10 of our campuses. Not only will we have these task forces meeting over the next several months, working on creating initiatives and strategies to create our strategic plan, but we will have town halls where we will go out into our community. So anybody that wants to come and give us input about goal 4, how we retain and hire great teachers, or goal 3, how we have efficient and effective resources for our schools, or goal 1, how we commit to great instructional practices for every student, will be able to come and give us that input, and they will be heard. We will do this work in alignment with our budget process. We can't create a strategic plan we can't pay for. So as we do the work, and as Mr. Lynn said, we will be coming forward to this board often to share the updates on the budget process. We will be also updating the board for your guidance and your input in the creation of our strategic plan. It's important that as we present the strategic plan, we've looked at it over the next several years, and it's in sequence, it's harmonious, that one action that has to go before the first flows in that direction, that ultimately we can pay for it. What I'm excited about is the words about being the premier school district in the state of Texas. In a lot of districts you could say that and it would just be words. But when I look at where we are and how close we could be to that goal, it's not just words. We're uniquely situated in Montgomery to achieve that very end. We have an amazing community. They want us to be the premier school district in the state of Texas. And so what's exciting is we will honor the things that have led us to this point, but we really can't paint a blank canvas for what that means. And what does our community expect when we talk about being the premier school district in Texas? And so that will be the focus, but it is a journey. But I do know that we will get there. We know we are the premier school district in Texas when we fulfilled our promise to be about every child, serving them with excellence, and preparing them for future success. So that's what I've learned. Happy to take any questions or input that you may want to share.
Board members, questions?
When did you start, Dr. Morrison?
Officially, the last week of July, but as soon as I was named lone finalist, I started the work, reaching out, listening, learning, engaging, so June.
So in that time, I mean, I have to, make some comments after watching this presentation and interacting with you over the last, I would say this election process, but also getting to know some of the staff and hearing Chris Lynn and looking at the audit and things like that. You have made tremendous progress in this time of listening, but on top of that, interpreting what was being said to you and then taking action. So I would say that this sets the stage, from what I'm seeing, for a roadmap to the roadmap, if you will. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
It does.
And I think that I can't wait to see what you've got coming with the budget process and with this in tandem, because it sounds like to me the budget process really depends on this as well.
Yeah, it's got to be a lot of alignment. Sometimes, a strategic plan isn't worth the paper it's written on, because you look at it and, it's just words. I know a lot about an organization based on its budget. You see its commitments. I say before, our household budgets. We know that we have to put food on the table. We know that we have to pay our bills. We know that we want to put money in the kids' college fund. And so those are all the things that we have to do. But then you hope that there's enough left over to do things you'd like to do. And then sometimes you get really fortunate to do things you'd love to do. Our budget, our strategic plan has to be our commitment to fund and do those things that we have to do. And then along that journey, we'll do some of those things we really would like to do. And then to the point when we get really, really good at this, we'll start doing some of those things we love to do.
When do you plan to start attacking this? When do you plan on?
We've been doing that every day.
Yeah.
We'll continue. But the exciting part of...
I think the formality of it.
Yeah. We will have our first meeting with our task forces in December to get them oriented in terms of the work, the commitment. Dr. Bartlett, the principal of Lone Star Elementary School, is going to be our principal helping us oversee this work, because I thought it was really important to have a principal perspective in creating this document. And so we're starting to create guidance for our team leaders, structure, timelines, be in alignment with the budget process. We'll start having the task forces meet several times each month in January, February, March. We'll have the town halls to invite their community, so anyone who wants input can come in. We'll start doing surveys. And again, at our at our board quarterly reports, we will be spending time each and every time on strategic plan development and budget.
Has our staff ever been engaged in this capacity before?
I'm sorry?
Has our staff, our principals and And our administrative staff ever been engaged in this type of process before?
I think some have. Some of our principals who have been in other districts certainly have. I think what's exciting, and as I listen to the folks that I get to work with, they have been definitely involved in everything that we've been doing, from balancing the budget to creating the goals. I don't know how many of my senior team and principals knew what a KPI was 3 months ago, but they know now, and I'm excited about that, because at the end of the day, as superintendent, you're a teacher on special assignment, and so knowing what folks that you get to work with know, and then getting their advice, but they're fully engaged in this work, and I'm excited about that, and I'm honored to be able to work with them to try to deliver these things.
Other questions? Dr. Morrison, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, next we have the monthly financial reports. Those are provided for you board members. Are there any questions?
I only have one question, and Chris is gonna follow up on the computer.
All right, so the board will go into closed meeting as authorized by the Texas Open Meetings Act under the following government code sections 551.074 to consider resignations, deliberate the appointment, employment, and evaluation, reassignment duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, to hear or a complaint or charge against the officer or employee, or to deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. We will return here shortly, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. All right, the board is back in open session at 9:07 p.m. Are there any motions?
I move to approve personnel as presented in closed session.
Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? It passes. Meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.